we formed a transition team, which later kind of was, at the time, the pastor search team and this transition team kind of came together. And the first thing that they did was work whereby they surveyed you, the church body, to find out certain things about how you feel and what you think. And out of that, we last August approved 5 different areas of focus that we felt as a church that we should spend our time and efforts working toward. Also, during those listening sessions, we came out of those listening sessions with a lot of information to say, you know, what we've been doing for a long time is kind of been working, but there are a lot of areas for opportunity that we feel like we can streamline, create some more accountability, and really make things easier for us as a church body to manage. And so throughout this process, the alignment group that kind of met with the deacons sort of gave them a charge to go and say, give us an idea of what a new potential structure could look like to help us accomplish some of these things with regards to streamlining and creating more accountability. So the alignment team spent a lot of time working through all that, came back, made a presentation to the deacons. The deacon says, now, and we realize, of course, there's still a lot of details that we need to work out, but basically the deacons affirmed the work that they had done, and then, of course, there was another presentation made to core group leaders. And the core group leaders also at that time affirmed the work that was being done. So what I'd like to do is recognize Will Bates, who is going to take us through a proposed church structure. Now, let me go ahead and quickly say we are not voting on this tonight. There's a lot of information here. So Will is going to go through this, kind of go through the slides and things, and then at the end we have handouts that you can take with you. There you can read through all of the details and have a chance to sort of marinate on this. There will be a listening session at 6:30. Is that right? 6:30 on this coming Wednesday night. My guess is we'll probably have a couple other sessions where you can come and ask questions and just kind of see about this. Now, as Will's going to mention in a few minutes from now, you know, there's still a lot of details that we would need to work through this to get it all squared away. So we're not going to have all of the final answers about how this is going to work. And we're probably assuming that we decide as a church to move forward with this. We're going to have to live into this for a period of time and kind of figure out, like, well, that wasn't exactly, we didn't word that exactly right. What do we really mean? What needs to be changed? So just understand that this is going to be sort of a work in progress, but a lot of effort has already been put into this. And I personally, I'm actually excited about some of the things that you're going to see here, because I think it really will help us to function much more efficiently and in a much healthier way as a church. So, Will, I'm turning it over to you.
Sure. Give me a second to get situated here. As Gerald said, that you know, we're not going to vote on this evening. I'm going to try to anchor this because I may move a little bit. So we won't be voting on this evening. I want to present the slides. If we could hold off on questions, because I think it will flow better as far as information. There's a lot of information to provide. If you could hold off on whatever questions that we might get entertained at the end. For the end, but the plan is to present these slides, to present this overview, and as Gerald mentioned, to hand out a document that is a more detailed description of what I'm presenting tonight. Now, if there are any in the audience who just really want to have something in their hands right now to take notes on, raise your hand. I can give you a copy right now. Otherwise, I think it would be good if you could just allow your attention to be on the slides. Because my experience for myself, I know when I have something like this, I tend to read through it and then I'm not reading the slides. So if anybody would like to have one, I certainly could get that to you. But if you could just look at the slides, and then again, we'll give these out at the end that you can take home with you. And then this Wednesday will be more of an open discussion, question and answer session. The vote that we'll have to approve this will be on August 9th. We'll re-present it on August 2nd again for any questions and open discussion at that point. And as Gerald said, it's not something that we are saying that we have perfected and we're ready to go with it. We've got to live through it to experience what kinds of things are working the way that we thought, and some that not. In fact, the presentation that I've given to the deacons and to the core groups, and what I'm giving tonight, we met with Stacy after those presentations and did actually make a couple of adjustments since then. So some of you will see just a couple of adjustments from what I presented to you. So it will continue to be a work in progress. And the idea is on the vote is to say, let us live into this for at least a year and come back with what our evaluations are and changes and recommendations, and then we can discuss it further at that point. So that's the idea. All right, so without further ado, just going back through the goals that we have going into this structure revision. Wanted to create a structure that supports the vision statements and goals that we approved last year and keeps the church body focused on those. And then again, through our listening sessions that we had last March, a lot of these points from goals number 2 came out of those. We want to simplify and streamline our structure to create a more efficient operating model, to make it easier for people to understand how to get things done, to create clear lines of responsibility, to provide accountability, to reduce burnout among our members who are serving on a group or multiple groups. And then the third one, to revise the structure in a way that continues to facilitate using people's giftedness. So to just kind of review where we are currently, this is just kind of an overall listing of our church organizational structure. The core groups, those core leadership groups that are up there are from our, that's what we have now, and it's from a purpose-driven church model. Listing kind of the number of members and the liaisons that are part of that to give you a feel for you know, what we have been trying to do in terms of fielding those groups. And then we have our support groups and of course the staff and deacon body. This was also created when the church was probably 2 to 3 times the size it is now. So we've got a different makeup of our church, and so I think that's a part of what we're looking at as we were trying to come up with a structure that would work with where we are currently, but would give us the flexibility going forward as well. So the purpose-driven church model is, you know, it's worked well in some areas, and as Gerald said, you know, maybe there's some opportunities that we saw for improvement. So that's what we wanted to try to tackle there as well. So I wanted to list some of the teams that are part of our current structure. This is how they're listed in terms of being a part of certain leadership groups. And I guess I wanted to point out the terminology there that we talk about groups. That's a reference to a leadership group. Our core groups and our support groups are listed as leadership groups. And then we have teams that are serving. And so we're going to maintain that terminology in terms of groups versus teams as I present this structure. Okay, so a group being the leadership, team being more specific, accomplishing a purpose or goals. So just to take us back briefly through our vision statements that we had, won't read through those in full, but we start off with biblical literacy and spiritual growth. We're going to use, through the use of spiritual disciplines and biblical studies, we will equip the people, supported by a process of study and application. For outward service, we want to show our love for our neighbor. And we do this in seeking to respond to the needs God places before us, locally and globally. For caring relationships, through nurturing of caring relationships, both in our church family and the community, it's characterized by carrying one another's burdens. And for evangelism, building relationships on our campus, in our community, and throughout the world, with the intent to lead them to a loving relationship with Jesus Christ. And then finally, authentic worship, that we would offer our praises that are both progressive and creative while honoring the traditions of our past embracing the diversity and giftedness of our people. So those are the 5 vision statements that we approved last August, and was the focus of trying to create this new structure. So this is a pictorial model of what we're proposing. That includes 3 leadership groups, the deacon body, trustees, and the ministry council, 2 new leadership groups, all connected through a leadership council that will kind of coordinate the activities of those leadership groups. Now, I guess I want to point something out about the picture that I thought maybe was, well, didn't want it to be as subtle as maybe it might be, and don't know for sure if it is or not, but of course you see the cross that's there. That's actually a shadow of the cross, and all of the people are facing the cross with the light behind it creating that shadow. So to emphasize that, yes, Christ is the focus of everyone in the church, in the center of the church, the head of the church. So we're going to talk about each one of these leadership groups. And again, this structure revolves around these 3 leadership groups: the ministry council, the deacons, and the trustees. The responsibilities of these leadership groups: to lead the church in following vision statements, support the teams that take action to accomplish the goals of the vision statements, and continually recommending visions and additions to visions and goals. So we have those 3 leadership groups, and as I had shown in the previous model, they're all kind of connected through a leadership council. So I want to take you first through that leadership council. And who is a part of that leadership council? So we see the 3 leadership groups: the ministry council, the deacons, and the trustees. The leadership council is the big circle in the middle, with our senior pastor in the center. And also we have chair people and chair elects from each of those leadership groups. So 7 people in total. The chair elect, okay, is someone who has been elected but then will take office later, okay? So each one of those groups, for starting out, would elect both a chairperson as well as a chair-elect. The chair-elect would serve basically 2 years. The first year as the chair-elect and would be a part of that leadership council. Then the following year, they would automatically become the chairperson. Okay, so going forward, each of these leadership groups would then really be electing a new chair-elect each year, because the chairperson would automatically be taking that chair role in the second year of service. Okay. So we've got those 7 people, and originally we had just chair people in there, and one of the things that Stacy pointed out was that with just the chair people and Stacy, that with those 4 people, then that meant that each year there would be a completely new leadership council each year. So to have those chair elects as a part of that would add that continuity to the leadership council. So the responsibilities of the leadership council: to keep the church focused on the vision of the church, to set new goals and review significant issues for the church, to ensure coordination between the 3 leadership groups, and to select a nominating team. So now let me talk a little bit about the nominating team, and this is a little different than our current, okay? The nominating team would be an 8-member team who represents a cross-section of the church that may include people who are rotating off of current leadership roles. And they would present nominees to the church for election of deacons, trustee, and ministry council. And they would also present nominees for stewardship, facilities, and personnel to the church for affirmation. So again, election of deacons, trustees, and ministry council, affirmation for the personnel, stewardship, and facilities. So that process would look something very much like what we're doing now. Someone in the church body approaches someone else and says, "Are you willing to be nominated?" And enthusiastically they say yes. So that person then goes to the nominating team and says, "I nominate so-and-so." And so in this example, we're talking about elections. So the deacons, trustees, and ministry council, the nominating team selects twice as many as will be elected to present to the church, just like we did today. We had 8 deacons presented. We elected 4, and then for the Spanish speaking, we had 2 and elected 1. Right? So twice as many would be nominated for the church to elect, and the church body votes. Okay. Then for personnel, stewardship, and facilities, where they affirm, a similar kind of process, except that the church body simply affirms as opposed to voting. Okay, let me move on now to the deacon body. We see here in the deacons that the senior pastor is an ex officio non-voting member. The deacons would continue to be elected and serve 3-year terms. And they have 2 major areas of responsibility: caring and connecting. And you see some teams that are existing teams and some that are potentially new teams. And I'll talk about those some more later on as well. But the responsibilities: number 1, support congregational care, caring relationships, vision, statement, and goals. So that's 1 of the 5. Replace the family deacon ministry with a model that allows the deacons to support in-reach leaders in caring for the body. I'm going to elaborate this in just a little bit. Make connections with visitors and prospective members, and encourage people to serve in the areas of giftedness. So kind of key takeaways is the caring relationships, vision, and goals. All those teams that are in there are caring related teams. And then the connection, greeting and visitors, connecting with those visitors that are coming in. So let me talk about the caring model. You'll see in the large circle, it says Bible study groups with in-reach leaders. And this is actually a model that we introduced years and years ago that some are continuing to do. There are some classes that still have a designated in-reach person for caring for that group of people that's within that Bible study or small group. Okay, not all classes are currently doing that, but some are still doing that. So that's something that we would continue to do as a caring model. So how do the deacons fit in? A deacon would be assigned to each in-reach leader and provide an extra layer of care when needed. And they would periodically check in with the class. And so you see a couple other parts of that caring model where the staff care for people, and then we have those caring teams that we have currently: Stephen Ministry, Medical Benevolence, Bereavement Meal Ministry. So it's very much like what we have now. And there's just a simple example. So the in-reach leader in the Bible study group says, John is going to have surgery next week, and they're talking to their deacon that's assigned. Deacon says, well, I will visit him, and cloud in their head, I will tell the staff. So they communicate that need. It could be another need that maybe drive them to say, well, maybe I need to get in touch with the Stephen Ministry or Medical Benevolence or whatever that need may be. That doesn't necessarily mean that the in-reach leader must go through the deacon, just as might be the case now. In this example, the in-reach leader maybe is talking directly with a staff member. Jane's going through a tough time. Thank you for telling me. And thought is, I will ask Stephen Ministry to contact her. So the staff member goes directly to Stephen Ministry. And there may be some situations from just from keeping things confidential that just want to just have that direct interaction as far as providing that kind of layer of care. So that's the idea of the caring model that we have, that the deacons would kind of provide that extra layer of care, and could help be someone who could help direct if need be, in working through that in-reach caring model. So the other big part of what the deacons would lead would be in connecting with visitors. They would lead that. Connecting with visitors, whether they're wearing a bow tie or not, all visitors. Okay, so they would make a connection. They would forward to contact the staff, maybe a Bible study that would be well suited. They would also provide the information to visitors about our church. And they would maintain that contact until they're kind of well integrated into a Bible study where that in-reach leader may take over, staying in contact with them. Okay. So the next leadership group is the trustees. Again, we have the senior pastor as an ex officio non-voting member of the trustees. The trustees, something new for us of recent years. We have had trustees in the past, years and years ago. A 6-member group elected by the church, serving 3-year terms. And you see the teams on the left that they would support. Stewardship, facilities, and personnel, which are current support groups. And sorry, Roger, maybe the terminology might be changing on your document if we adopt that they're called teams instead of groups. We can decide how to call them, I guess. So the trustees would support these stewardship, facilities, and personnel, similar to how the deacons support them in reviewing proposals. But they would support them. They are not members of these teams, but they can sit in on meetings. And they would handle things like legal responsibilities, notes and contracts. They would serve as the board of directors for the church. Other things other potential teams they may oversee: signage, insurance, bylaws, technology. That's just some examples. So having the trustees in this role removes the business tasks currently expected from our deacons. All motions to the church body from these teams in this area would be vetted by the trustees. Some examples that would be discussed or must be discussed: legal issues, health insurance, contracts, leases, loans, budgets, policy manual change. Excuse me. Another item that we wanted to add that we felt like would be helpful is that the stewardship would be given a small percentage or dollar amount latitude for budget changes that will require trustee approval and communication to the church. We'll need to come back with some detail on that. It would be for non-personnel related items. But as an example, for instance, the utilities, as the utilities fluctuate, well, it doesn't match what our budget item was, so we'd have a need for that adjustment. So that's just one example. So the flow of reviewing of things that come up, any of the 3 teams would kind of flow that or vet that through the trustees. They might go to the leadership council and get their review on it, and then take that to the church body for motions or communication or otherwise. Okay. The third leadership group, the ministry council. And I've got the other 4 vision statements listed up there, not the statements, but what they're related to: biblical literacy and spiritual growth, evangelism, authentic worship, and outward service. The council includes the ministry staff. The senior pastor is an ex officio voting member, and 3 elected members serving 3-year terms. The responsibilities of the ministry council to lead the church in following the vision in those areas that I just mentioned, and lead or support teams that take action to accomplish the goals of those vision statements. So again, to kind of delve into a little bit about who is on ministry council, we have the senior pastor, the youth pastor, Latino pastor, discipleship pastor, worship pastor, which is the minister of music. Sorry for the wording change there, but it's the same. An evangelism chairperson that's elected, an outward service chairperson that's elected, and a third at-large member that's elected. Now I've got lines drawn specifically to the discipleship pastor and the worship pastor for implementing biblical literacy goals and authentic worship goals. This is a little bit of a change. Each ministry staff member will determine what teams are needed in their own area, whether ad hoc or ongoing. So those staff members will be empowered in their area of responsibility to work towards implementing the goals and reaching the vision. Okay? So the staff will be leading that effort and determining what teams are needed. Examples of ministry staff determining teams. Discipleship pastor decides to start a small team to develop an adult Bible study curriculum. For how long, to be determined. Or worship pastor decides to start a services team, for lack of no other word I could think to use, to coordinate ushers and audio video support. That might be something they choose to do. Okay. Then we have our non-staff elected members that we saw on the ministry council. Okay. They would then lead the teams. The teams are not a part of the ministry council, but those elected chair people are. So you have an evangelism team. That's a separate team from the outward service team. The evangelism team would work towards implementing the goals of the vision for evangelism, and the outward service team would work towards implementing the goals of that vision. They would still support other teams, such as the Lydia's Loft, God's Garden, and World Hunger. And then other teams that are supported by the ministry council include prayer and fellowship. All those under the ministry council leadership. So let me talk a little bit about teams in each leadership group. Each leadership group can select team leaders. And these team leaders can select team members. We're saying that a team must be at least 3 people. In our current bylaws it says at least 2, but we thought it might be good for that to be 3. The team leader will communicate the need for members to the church body. The team members are affirmed by their respective leadership group. And as we talked about terms of the team, we kind of found that each team need is a little different, so that decided each team term would be evaluated each year, and that team leaders would be selected each year. Now, team leaders can repeat as team leaders from year to year, but that's just something we thought we'll just do it on an annual basis. Unless it's an ad hoc situation where it's a short-term team, we did want to have teams commit to at least 1 year membership. So as an ongoing basis, if they're kind of an ongoing team, we would ask for the members and the leaders to commit to 1 year of service on those. Each leadership group can create and support other potential teams. For instance, the trustees, the technology team, ministry council, and maybe it's a summer breakfast team. We do want to put together some guidelines and training for team leaders to kind of review things like facilitating and taking minutes, how to reserve rooms, what the flow of communication might be as the teams come up with things, and how they get that communicated out to the church body. So things like that we thought would be helpful to review with team leaders. So just kind of trying to show a couple more examples of determining team members. As an example, a ministry council selects a World Hunger team leader or chairperson. So then the World Hunger chair communicates that need to the church for help. And then the World Hunger chair selects team members. So that's an example of the team process, much like has been the case for years, right? Another example, ministry council selects a prayer team leader. That prayer team leader communicates need to the church for help, and the prayer team leader selects team members. Okay, it's the same process. The leadership group can select a team leader, and then the team leader solicits help from the church, communicates that, and selects team members. Okay, just a very consistent process. Going back to the deacon teams, just to maybe expand on that a little bit, as we saw maybe a number of teams that are listed. The existing teams, such as Stephen Ministry, Medical Benevolence, Bereavement Meal Ministry, Reading, they would continue as they have been. We're not trying to reinvent the wheel. They would not be any different than what we're doing now. You saw up there some other potential teams, such as hospital visitation, homebound, visitors and new members, spiritual gifts. Short term, because of our size and such, that we feel like, well, the deacons could or should fill those roles. We're not trying to create even more teams based on where we are today. But at the same time, we wanted to create the flexibility for that potential to occur. So if you look below, it says, well, as the church grows, this structure allows for the deacons to expand these to include non-deacon members if they choose. So we've got that flexibility in this structure. Okay. Another thought that came up was, okay, if I have a new idea, who do I talk to? If you start from the left, is it related to caring for the church body or connecting to visitors? Then tell a deacon, and the deacon will bring it up to the deacon group. Is it related to personnel, the budget, or facilities? Then tell a trustee. The trustees will bring it up to the rest of the trustees. Is it anything else? Then tell someone on the ministry council. Okay? So it's that simple. You've got just those areas that for the deacons and trustees. If it's anything else, ministry council. Okay? So hopefully that would clear up if people have an idea of who they can go to. So I want to point out some things, I guess, that what we see in this structure, I think that is good. Number one, that we're following the biblical model for deacons to be spiritual leaders and caregivers. We incorporate a trustee structure that better supports the church vision and mission by removing the business tasks currently expected from our deacons. We provide empowerment for the staff to lead in their respective areas. We utilize everyone's spiritual gifts in the most effective ways. We incorporate a ministry council structure that better supports the vision and mission by providing just one leadership group from many areas and facilitating more efficient planning and oversight. So kind of some comparisons of old versus proposed or current versus proposed. So on the left we have what we're currently doing, and on the right what is proposed. So for the deacons, for instance, an elected deacon body. I show currently 18, but maybe that's not quite right. But so on the right, we still have an elected deacon body. And at this point, we're not proposing any change in what we're doing in terms of those numbers. On the left, an organized family ministry and a deacon liaison to each core group. On the right, an organized team structure following the caring model, no family ministry, and no longer deacon liaisons to these other groups throughout the church. Underneath, the trustees, which is new. Currently, the deacons serve as the board of directors. And for the proposed, the 6 elected trustees would serve as the board of directors. Currently, the deacons review significant personnel and budget proposals. And that would now fall under the trustees. Support groups. Here I call them groups. Personnel, stewardship, and facilities, currently 6 to 9 per group is what our bylaws call for. At this point, there will be no change other than that they would be under the trustee leadership. Okay. So next, let's look at the core groups, our leadership groups. Currently, 6 to 8 lay people per group. That's 36 to 48, plus a deacon liaison and a staff liaison. The proposed as a leadership group includes the ministry staff and 3 elected lay people. Ministry staff involvement below that. Currently, ministry staff liaison on each core group. In the proposed, they would no longer be liaisons to other groups. They would serve on the ministry council, and then they would lead in their areas. Okay. Some points about teams. So the only number requirement is that there would be at least 3 members. Okay, for all the other teams that are mentioned. Again, we're asking for just 1-year commitments for members or the life of the team if it's ad hoc. So there's more flexibility to utilize ad hoc teams. This structure allows for flexibility of team sizes to change as our church size changes. And meetings will be limited to team needs, no monthly leadership gathering. Now let me talk a little bit about the transition and how we can get started. Again, we're asking for a vote of approval for a trial, 1-year trial. Okay, how do we get started with some of these? During the transition, the current deacons are eligible to be nominated for the role of trustee or one of the ministry council positions. If elected, then those deacon positions would be backfilled using the current process in our bylaws. Okay, we still follow that. For the trustees to start, they'll be elected as follows. We'd have 2 for a 3-year term, 2 for a 2-year term, and 2 for a 1-year term. So then that will allow for us then going forward to just elect 2 per year each year. And then similarly with the ministry council, We would elect 3 members to 3, 2, and 1-year terms, and then start electing 1 per year. And all of these terms would start in January every year. We thought it was helpful for all those to be on the same schedule. So that would be a little bit of change. That would be a change for the deacons. Currently start in September, but they would actually then start in January each year, along with the other elected leadership positions and teams that we form. So how do we do this with our current bylaws and go into this knowing that we still have some things to kind of work through? So we've identified certain sections of the current bylaws that if we suspend, only those sections that would be basically in conflict with what we're proposing, okay? The rest of the bylaws would still be intact and we'd be following. So we have the following areas of the bylaws identified that we would need to suspend. Article 3, which describes church organizations. All of Section 1. So that's all it does, is describe our current core groups. Okay? The 6 core groups that we have, that's what it describes. We have Article 6, duties of pastors, staff, deacons, and officers. Only Section 4 of the deacons, paragraphs B through D, paragraph B, directors, I want to mention that would not be suspended. That is saying that the deacons or the board of directors would not be suspended until the trustees are elected. So, you know, say the trustees are elected this fall for their term to start in January, the current deacons would continue to be the board of directors up until January, and then that's when the trustees would take over as board of directors. Article 7, selection of pastor, staff, deacons, and officers. Only Section 6, paragraph C, items 1 through 5. This describes the nominating team for deacons and dates of presenting and electing them. Article 8 talks about the leadership gathering. And then 9, the church years. It says the church year for deacons starts September 1st, and this would change to January 1st in the new structure. So all other parts of the current bylaws will stay in effect. The new structure description document will guide the 1-year trial, and any significant issues not covered by this document will be handled through the current bylaws and policy. Okay, getting towards the end. Evaluation and revision process for this 1-year trial. For the evaluation process, the alignment team would help with the evaluation under the direction of the Leadership Council. The following methods will be used to capture and evaluate feedback. Maintain an open door contact for the entire church through email or phone to the alignment team. Concerns can be addressed quickly with the team and the Leadership Council. We would assign alignment team members to groups or teams. We would also meet on a quarterly basis to discuss, evaluate, and recommend changes. And I also wanted to point out that alignment team members are eligible to be elected to any leadership position because it would be even be helpful for members to experience the implementation of the structure other than as advisors. Otherwise, the team members would be advisors if not elected. So, I presented that. I want to, at this time, hand out the full description to everyone so that you can have a copy of that to take home and read over. I presented a lot of information. And there's even more so on the document that's written. But a lot of what we had written down on that, I think just kind of represents what we currently do in a lot of situations. So there's a fair amount there in that description that you have that really is writing down what we currently do. I also want to mention, in addition to that copy, if you're interested, if you want, I have copies up front of our entire bylaws with the sections highlighted that we would be suspending. So I've got copies of those up front if you would like a copy of those as well. They look just like this. So this section here that's highlighted in yellow is one of the sections that we would be suspending while we would be implementing and living this proposed structure. Okay? So you can have a copy of that, so you can see what it is that we would be suspending and what we would still be intact even through this 1-year trial period. The slides and description we'll make available on the website so that the entire church body can access them there. We'll also add information or send that out to the church as far as an email if you've got questions, to send them to an email address that we'll provide or a phone number. I'll have my phone number on there, although we'll have to say next week I most likely will be unreachable. I'll be in Costa Rica for a week, so. But we'll provide contact information. And again, this Wednesday at 6:30, is an opportunity to meet back in here and just have some open dialogue, questions and answers for what's been proposed. So please take this information and this document, read through it. Feel free to ask questions. As after this Wednesday, we'll identify what other opportunities are needed for additional open sessions for us to have that dialogue. As I mentioned, we'll be voting on August 9th to basically approve proceeding with this for a 1-year trial basis, okay? And suspension of the sections of the bylaws that I mentioned. We'll present again on August 2nd so that we can again review it and have an opportunity for questions and discussion then as well. So I don't know how we're doing on time. I mean, it could take, if there's just a few questions in terms of points of clarity, whatever, can take those. Some of those questions may be answered in the document that we give out to you, but if anybody's got any immediate ones, points of clarity that I need to address. Pam?
Well, I should know this. The current missions group, I've tried to look in my practical, but that would fall under the ministry council?
Yes. The current, if you can look at the current missions group, we have that listed as evangelism and missions group, right? We're actually looking to divide that up into 2 separate teams, a missions or outward service team and an evangelism team, each with their own chairperson who are elected. They're elected to 3-year terms. Okay.
And then one other question. On slide 20, I think it was slide 20, Steve, if you could run to slide 20, just a question, I'll wait until it gets there. Help me understand, it looks like the trustees may or may not go to the leadership council before something would go to the church body. Why would we not go to the leadership council?
It just depends on how significant it is. I mean, if nothing else, it's going to be communicated to the leadership council.
Okay, so there's going to be communication. I mean, I wouldn't want something going to the church body without perhaps, for example, Stacy knowing about it.
Sure. Yeah, it makes sense to at least communicate. They can look at it briefly and say, yeah, this is something maybe we should sit down and talk about, or no.
So there's at least awareness.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it should be awareness. Yeah.
Once you have team leaders that are chosen, how do they interface with the ministry council for advice or to run by them things that the team is working on?
Just through communication. So there would be maybe someone assigned from the ministry council to a team leader that's designated by that council. And so then there would be that communication between the two, and then that person that's on the council then can go back to the rest of the council to bring up whatever's been discussed as needed.
And would that be sort of the normal procedure, that these groups, these teams would not just kind of go off on their own, but that as they, plan things, that it goes back to the council for approval or input or something?
Yeah, and it's in that document where we're asking the teams to send minutes of their meetings, of their activities, to the respective leadership group. So that leadership group will have, that information as to what's going on with each one of those teams. So that's in the document there that we've given out, that's a part of it. So the team leader would need to, send some documentation so that the whole council can see what's going on with each one of the teams. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, I was just thinking about, like, with the prayer group, Marcus is our staff liaison, and his input is so vital to what we do that I guess I'm a little concerned about not having that kind of relationship with somebody on this council unless it's designated, well, this is your go-to person.
Yeah, I would expect to have that designation. We try to shy away from writing in things like staff liaisons to be a part so that they could focus on their work.
Yes.
But at the same time, we wanted to kind of facilitate that as teams wanted to have that input, that could happen.
Okay.
So hopefully in living it, that can be effective. Anything else? All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Will. As you guys can tell, there's been a tremendous amount of work, a lot of hours, a lot of thought, a lot of discussion that has gone into this. So thank you, Will, and the other members of the alignment team for your input and long hours. So a lot of folks have been doing a lot of work for the last couple of years, and I think we're starting to see some really good results from that. So thank y'all for all that. As Will said, there will be an alignment team, not an alignment team, but a listening session at 6:30 on this Wednesday night in this room. We will evaluate the need for other sessions so there'll be plenty of opportunities for you to ask questions, provide your input, et cetera, et cetera. So